Patrick Cook here. Well, thanks for coming back to the next session. I want to talk about some of these additional, maybe a little bit more advanced ambient controls. Now, I think it was back in session 40, session 40, 40. We were talking about the ambient controls. So we have the ambient, and you know what ambient is, all right? Ambient is the light that is in the environment that's not necessarily directly from the source, and the ambient light is sort of like light that's kind of scattering around in the scene. We can influence the coloring of that ambient light with these controls. And we had also talked about the depth of the ambient light. So if you can think of a shadow here, the depth of your ambient light would be how far it would penetrate into the shadow area, all right, or how intense the ambient light would be that would then penetrate your shadow areas. And we had talked about how shadows are quite important for your scene. I mean, if you look at this, we've got shadows here. We got lots of shadows. There's all this dark area here. That's all shadowing. All right. And shadowing really helps you get some really good depth, a sense of depth in your scene. Now, okay, so now we've got some other controls here. One is called a diffuse shadow. All right. And if we adjust this, we don't see anything happening. And the reason for that is only if hard shadows were calculated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to post processes, talk about this in another session later on, hard shadows. Now we're going to talk about this at another time. This is the post processing panel, and it's got some very important capabilities, but we don't want to get in too deep too soon. So right now we don't have any hard shadows enabled. All right. So without these hard shadows enabled, this control here doesn't have any impact on our scene. So when we talk about the post-processing, we'll get back to this particular control. Now, this control does have, all right, an impact. It's got nothing to do with hard shadows. Now, what this is ambient shadow. What this control does is it allows you to change the contrast ratio of the ambient light intensity so that we can create, or no, put a better way, so that we can adjust the level of the shadowing within our scene. So if I put it here, ambient shadow is 0. I have basically removed all of the shadowing capabilities of the ambient light as defined up here, the ambient intensity, and of course the depth intensity is related to this. If I take and adjust this all the way up here, I've actually simulated shadows which are very deep, very dark. Now, it's not normal and it's not natural to have a scene where there's just like intense shadowing everywhere. In this case, you can see here that my shadowing, my ambient shadowing, has become so intense that I have lost all detail within these shadow areas. If I adjust this all the way out this way, now I've flooded the scene with so much light that there are virtually no shadows remaining. If I am right here in the middle, all right, I have a compromise between, this is all ambient light. This is ambient light intensity, specifically for the purposes of optimizing your shadowing within the scene. All right, so right here in the middle, I have a balance between my ambient shadowing too little and ambient shadowing too much. What you want to do is to use this control to give yourself an optimal for that scene, or optimal for what your artistic intention is. You want to give yourself an optimal shadowing environment. All right. Now, I always use this ambient shadow adjustment after I've settled in up here, because this will also have an impact. This is my ambient intensity, ambient light level. All right. Obviously, if I adjust this here now, I have thrown off whatever I was trying to accomplish here with this ambient shadow. So I always go for the best I can do with this in the neutral position. I always go for the best I can get up here, and including the depth. And then I kind of think of this as a fine tuning of the shadows within my scene, or relative to the object. So I like this. I like this scene to have shadows, but I don't want so much shadowing that I've lost detail in a large portion of my Mandelbulb scene. No detail up here, all that detail's lost. It's all muddled back in here. All right. So use this ambient shadow to fine tune your work up here on the ambient intensity and the ambient depth. All right. So once you get that tweaked in, I don't know, maybe that's why the control is a little lower. All right. This control is lower on the user interface than this one here. Maybe they actually did intend for you to kind of pay attention to this, kind of a fine tune after you do these. I don't know. Now, now down here, you've got a second reflection. So in a scene, you're going to have your source light come in, and that source light is going to reflect. It's going to reflect. It's going to simulate reflection based upon the curvature of your of your surface, or how much, depending upon how much light is absorbed by the surface, or it could be reflected, or it could be refracted, or it could just be absorbed. All right. So that's the behavior of your light source. We're talking about ambient light. This is the light that is bouncing around in the environment, not necessarily from a source. The source of ambient light could be the reflected light from the source. Okay. So the second reflection gives you the ability to reflect the ambient light off of the object. Let's just tweak that here. You see, I'm all the way down. Go all the way up and all the way down, just so you could see the difference. All the way up. So all the way up, I've actually dialed up the amount of reflection off of the fractal image or the scene or the object, the amount of reflection of the ambient light. So this is the greatest amount of reflection of the ambient light, not the source light, the ambient light. This is the least amount of reflection of the ambient light within the scene. Again, it's I like to have this in a neutral position when I'm up here. This is really just a matter of almost using it to kind of brighten your environment. All right, now this mode right here is a different method of calculating the lighting within your scene. I'm just going to click that on. A little bit difference. Okay, you see that? All right, internal to the program, there's calculations that will simulate your light. So, and I've never seen this documented anywhere. Just pick one. All right, whichever one seems to give you the best result, pick it. And this right here, this is referred to as roughness, and that's not really having much of an impact, but you can see here that with the control all the way over to the left, I have kind of a rough reflection. It's just kind of a gives it almost a fine-grained sandpaper look all the way over to the right. It kind of smooths everything out. All right, so this is a little fine tune that allows you to kind of give your Mandelbulb surface a little bit more texture, but extremely fine grained texture. In this particular environment here, this particular scene, I don't really want roughness too much, because I think of all of those things as kind of like metal plates. I'm going to give that nice smooth, or maybe something like that. All right, so that's some additional, more advanced controls of the ambient light panel. Again, it's an artistic thing. You play with it until you get something that you think is pretty cool. And that's all that really matters, is that you have created a nice still image with the appropriate shadows that will help you define the depth and a sense of kind of like being there, a sense of depth. All right. So we'll continue our discussion of the Mandelbulb 3D software in the next session. I'll see you there.